Your water filter might be lying to you right now. Hikers trust devices never built for what they're actually drinking. Silty alpine runoff, glacier melt, water pulled from streams below grazing land. Assuming a squeeze bottle or a sleek integrated lid means they're protected. It doesn't. Some filters clog before the job finishes. Some claims never say what's actually being removed. And one popular design, the kind you trust without thinking twice, might only improve taste, while the real threat passes straight through. Today, 3 filtration mistakes putting your gut at risk on trail, and 3 systems that hold up. I'm Ranger Jack, 17 years outfitting backcountry and winter trips. No brand deals, no free gear. I've had a filter fail on a client trip, and that's exactly why I test every filter before it goes in a pack. Mistake number 1, trusting a squeeze or straw filter alone for anything beyond a short solo hike. Here's why people buy these. They're cheap, they're light. They've got thousands of reviews from people who used one on a single weekend trip and loved it. That reputation is real. It's just built on the wrong use case, and that gap is exactly where buyers get caught. Here's the problem. Most hollow fiber squeeze filters are engineered for personal short-term use. One person, a few liters a day, relatively clear water source, minimal sediment. Take that same filter and hand it to a group doing multi-day miles through silty alpine streams or glacial melt, and the membrane starts clogging almost immediately. Flow rate drops fast. You're standing at a creek bed, squeezing harder and harder, getting less and less water out the other end, burning daylight you don't have while your group waits behind you. That's an inconvenience. Here's the actual danger. When a filter clogs in the field, people improvise because nobody wants to sit at a creek for 45 minutes filling one bottle. They backwash it wrong. They force water through a membrane that's already under stress. Micro cracks happen at that point, and here's the part that should worry you. You cannot see a micro crack with your eyes. The filter still looks fine. It still feels fine in your hand. It still produces water. But somewhere in that fiber bundle, there is now a pathway that unfiltered water is taking straight through, and you have no field method to check for it. I had a client on a 5-day trip try to push a squeeze filter through water that looked more like coffee than a mountain stream. It slowed to almost nothing by day 2. We ended up hand pumping a backup filter for the rest of that trip because nobody trusted that membrane anymore, and honestly, they shouldn't have. That's not a hypothetical. That's a group standing at a creek bed losing an hour of daylight because a filter designed for one clean water hiker was asked to do a job it was never built for. Price to performance here is deceptive. The filter itself is cheap up front, but replacement cartridges, the time lost to clogging, and the real risk of a compromised membrane make it a false economy the moment you're doing serious mileage or bringing more than one person along. You end up paying twice, once for the filter, and again in the time and fuel it costs you when it can't keep up, and you have to fall back on boiling instead. To be fair, for a short day hike pulling from a clear mountain stream, this is completely fine. That's genuinely what it was built for. The mistake isn't owning one. The mistake is trusting it for conditions it was never designed to handle, then being surprised when it fails exactly where the engineering runs out. It's not a bad filter. It's the wrong filter for what you're asking it to do. Here's the thing that makes this mistake so easy to fall into. Nothing about the failure announces itself. There's no warning light, no obvious sign of stress, no moment where the filter tells you it's being pushed past its design limit. You just notice the flow getting slower, and most people respond by pushing harder instead of stopping to ask why. That instinct, squeeze harder, force it through, is exactly what turns a slow filter into a compromised one. And once a membrane is compromised, you're not filtering water anymore. You're pouring it through a formality. And the next mistake isn't even about the filter itself. It's about trusting a label that sounds far more official than it actually is. Mistake number 2, relying on vague purifies water language without knowing what is actually being removed. You've seen the packaging. Removes 99.9% of contaminants. Trail ready. Adventure-proof. It sounds reassuring. It sounds like someone already did the homework for you, so you don't have to think about it further. Here's the problem. A lot of that language is doing more work than the actual specification sheet backs up, and most buyers never dig past the front of the box to check. There's a real meaningful difference between a filter and a purifier, and most casual buyers have never once been told what that difference is. A filter generally handles bacteria and protozoa, organisms like Giardia and Cryptosporidium. A purifier goes further and also addresses viruses. If a product doesn't clearly publish which category it actually falls into, with a disclosed micron rating or a comparable name standard behind it, you are buying based on a feeling the marketing gave you, not a fact you can verify. That gap doesn't matter in your kitchen sink at home. It matters at a water source downstream from grazing land or agricultural runoff, where viral contamination becomes a real possibility that a bacteria and protozoa-only filter was never built to catch in the first place. You treat your water exactly like the instructions say. You feel responsible. You feel safe. And the actual risk in that specific water source was never addressed at all because the device was never rated for it. That's the part buyers consistently miss. You don't discover that gap on the product page. You discover it 3 days later, on trail, feeling sick with no idea why, because you did everything the box told you to do, and the box never told you the whole story. Price matters here too. Mid-range devices that skip clear certification disclosure are often charging premium prices for a level of protection you can't actually verify from the packaging alone. At that price point, what you should be getting is transparency. Instead, you're getting confident language and a vague number, and you're paying a markup for the confidence rather than for anything you can independently confirm. To be fair, plenty of filters in this category perform exactly as intended for their actual rated purpose, and they're honest about what that purpose is. The danger isn't always the product itself. It's the assumption the buyer brings to it. If you don't know precisely what your device is rated to remove, you're not making an informed decision. You're hoping, and hope is not a filtration method. That doesn't mean every unrated product is dangerous, and it doesn't mean every certified one is bulletproof either. It means the responsibility for knowing the difference has quietly shifted from the manufacturer to you. And most buyers never realize that shift happened. The word purifies is doing a lot of work the spec sheet won't back up. And the last mistake on this list is worse, because it comes in a shape most hikers trust without even thinking twice about it. Mistake number 3. Trusting a bottle integrated or gravity filter from a popular outdoor adjacent brand without knowing what's actually inside the cartridge. This is the one I told you at the start would surprise you. Here's why people fall for it. The brand feels familiar. You've seen it in stores, maybe on other gear you already own, maybe recommended by a friend who never had a problem with it. The design is sleek. The whole pitch is convenience. Fill it up, drink straight from it. No separate pumping, no waiting, no thinking required. That kind of design sells fast, and it sells well because it removes friction from a task people already find tedious, and tedious tasks are exactly the ones people are looking to shortcut. Here's the contradiction. Brand recognition in outdoor apparel, hydration accessories, or general lifestyle gear does not automatically transfer to filtration engineering. Those are different disciplines with different testing standards. Some integrated bottle and cartridge systems use carbon-based filtration media that is genuinely excellent at improving taste and reducing sediment and chlorine smell. But carbon alone is not the same thing as pathogen-rated protection. The real problem shows up when the packaging blurs that distinction using confident, safety-adjacent language positioned right next to a cartridge that was never independently rated the way a dedicated filtration brand's product would be. The buyer thinks they bought protection. What they may have actually bought is better tasting water. Those are two completely different purchases, and the difference only becomes obvious in exactly the situation where it matters the most. Drinking straight from a questionable alpine source, fully assuming complete protection, when the device in your hand may only be handling taste and clarity. nothing more. This is close to what happened on a trip I still think about. We had a filter freeze solid overnight at altitude and crack straight through the housing. And it looked completely fine sitting in the pack the next morning. It wasn't until we tried to actually use it that we found out it had failed overnight. Nobody got sick because we caught the crack before anyone drank from it, but it nearly ended that trip 2 days in, burning stove fuel that was meant for cooking food just to boil enough water to get the group through. The gear looked capable right up until the moment it mattered. It just hadn't been tested for the exact conditions it ended up being used in. That's the same mistake sitting at the center of this one. A product that looks complete on the shelf and isn't until you're already relying on it somewhere remote. To be fair, some integrated systems on the market right now are genuinely well-engineered and clearly rated for pathogen removal. The issue isn't the bottle-integrated format itself. It's when the disclosure is missing and the buyer has no real way to tell the difference between a taste-only cartridge and a fully rated one. A convenient design and a rated design are not opposites. The problem only shows up when a brand lets you assume you're getting both, while only actually delivering one. The bottle looks rugged. The real question is what's actually inside the cartridge, and that's not something a product photo or a store display is ever going to show you. That's the pattern across all three of these mistakes if you step back and look at them together. It's never that the product does nothing. It's that the product does less than the buyer assumes, and the gap between those two things stays invisible right up until the exact moment you need it to hold. That's what to avoid. Now here's what real trail-ready water treatment actually looks like. The systems that earn the price instead of just wearing a confident label on the box. First, a hollow fiber squeeze or gravity system with a clearly published, independently verifiable micron rating built specifically for sustained group use, not just casual single-day trips. The construction here matches real trail volume instead of a showroom demo. You know exactly what it's rated to remove, and that number is disclosed up front, not buried or implied through vague adjectives. This is the direct fix for mistake number one, a system honest about the volume and conditions it can actually handle, instead of one quietly borrowing its reputation from a completely different use case. Second, a chemical treatment method like chlorine dioxide tablets carried as a rated backup rather than a primary system. This closes a gap that mechanical filters can miss entirely, viral contamination, and it comes with almost no mechanical failure points to worry about in cold weather, no membrane to clog at altitude, no cartridge to crack overnight in the cold. Just a proven chemical process with a known published contact time you can rely on, sitting in your pack as insurance rather than as your only line of defense. Third, a dedicated purifier that combines a filtration stage with a chemical or UV stage and clearly discloses certification against bacteria, protozoa, and viruses together in the same published spec sheet. This is the exact system that closes the gap exposed back in mistake number two. There's no ambiguity left about what it does and doesn't handle because the manufacturer actually tells you in writing, instead of leaning on a single reassuring word on the front label. This is what's actually sitting in my own kit when I'm outfitting a group every single trip. Not because a brand sent it to me. I don't take brand deals. I don't take free product, and nothing I carry gets tested any differently than what I'd hand to a paying client depending on it. If it can't survive my sink test in near-freezing water first, it doesn't go in a pack. That's not a slogan. That's the actual bar. And it's the same bar that would have caught that cracked cartridge before it ever left the gear closet. Before you buy your next filter, or before you trust the one already sitting in your pack, run it against this checklist. Is the micron rating actually disclosed in writing somewhere you can verify it independently? Does the product clearly state whether it's a filter or a purifier, bacteria and protozoa only, or bacteria, protozoa, and viruses together? What's the real flow rate in silty or cold water, not the number from a controlled showroom test? If you're anywhere near alpine or winter terrain, has the manufacturer said anything at all about freeze tolerance? Are you carrying a backup method that doesn't depend on your primary filter working perfectly? And are your expectations for maintenance and clogging realistic for a group trip? Instead of the solo day hike, the filter was actually designed around. None of these questions require a lab. They just require reading past the front of the box, which is the one step most buyers skip because the front of the box was designed specifically so they would, and that's really the through line across everything in this video. It was never about one bad brand or one broken product. It's about the gap between what a label promises and what a device is actually engineered to do, and that gap is exactly where preventable, ugly trail problems get built. Quietly, months before anyone ever fills a bottle. Outdoor conditions do not care about brand logos, sleek design, or how confident the packaging sounds. They care whether the gear performs when the water is cold, the group is bigger than one person, and there's no outfitter or store within a day's walk to bail you out. That's the whole test, every single time, regardless of what the box promised back at the trailhead. So tell me, what filter is currently sitting in your pack right now? Have you ever actually checked its rated micron size? Or did you just trust the box because the box sounded confident? Has it ever clogged or failed on you mid-trip? And did you catch it before it actually mattered? Drop it in the comments. The brand, how many trips or miles you've put on it, and what you noticed when it started to struggle. And tell me what gear category you want me to run through the freezing water test next.